Hello, I'm back. I am Melissa and I am an alcoholic, and my cat just demands attention right this very second. All right, this is the second video. All right, and sorry for that. Um, I did the reading in the Life Recovery Work or Bible, and now I'm doing the questions that go to the workbook. And the first question is under making restitution. How have I failed to respect the property of others? Have I been so harmed or condemned by others that I have avoided responsibility for myself? If so, by whom and how? What excuses have I used for not looking at my behaviors? And the next set of questions is unintentional sins. In what areas have I unintentionally harmed others with my words, moods, self pity, depression, anger, or fears? In what ways have I acted thoughtlessly without regard for others' needs or feelings? When and to whom? Okay. These next questions are under the category scapegoat. Have I been putting off making a list because I'm afraid of some responses? And if so, whose? Have I held on to shame about a certain incident or relationship? What am I willing to do to let go so that I can become willing to make amends? Is there someone I am having trouble forgiving who blocks my willingness? If so, who? These next questions are overcoming loneliness. How have I allowed isolation due to shame and guilt to keep me from supportive relationships? What is the role of shame and guilt in my isolation? Am I willing to forgive myself for the hurt I have caused others? And then it says to write a prayer of willingness to forgive and ask for God's grace to heal these relationships. It's not a question, but it was it was with that question. Okay, so the next set of questions is forgiven to forgive. Are, oh, are there people on my list that I am having trouble forgiving for their part in our relationship? If so, who and why? Okay, now I can have my lap back. All right, so in isolation. Okay. What keeps me from letting others off the hook? Fear, resentment, caretaking? No, that didn't come out right. I'm just going to delete the whole thing. Okay. What keeps me from letting others off the hook? Is it fear? Is it resentment? Or is it caretaking? What blocks me from forgiving others for the wrongs done to me? And then it has three A, B, and C. There are other questions that go with it. What of the others, sorry, delete that, delete that. It didn't delete that. Okay, let's try this again. All right. Fear of what others would think of me. Is it pride? Fear of letting others see my hurts? Fear of conflict? Or protecting others' feelings to avoid conflict, maybe? And the next set of questions is the fruits of forgiveness. That's the category. All right. So, is there anyone on my list of whose behavior I do not approve? If so, who and why? Am I willing to let go of judgment and disapproval to open myself to working this step? Have I been so afraid of rejection that I have delayed willingness to make amends? Who could reject me and why? And the last two questions is reaping goodness, okay? What crop did I sow while practicing my addiction? Describe the correlation between healthy living and acceptance of the consequences for my addictive behavior. Okay, so in my part of doing step 8, all right, I went through, okay, my 4-step inventory, and I grabbed the wrong papers. I was going to not do this, but I feel like the more of my vulnerability that I show, maybe the more it can be maybe you guys can understand things, because some people just don't know. Okay, so, all right. My list of people who I had harmed or, done me wrong was basically on my resentment list. Okay. So when I look at, for myself, all right, let's just start there. I had a lot of resentments towards myself because I was not the best mother. And I allowed the best years of my life to be consumed by alcohol and drugs and sexual immorality. And I like I said, I robbed a bank. So that that right there is enough to make you sit and sulk, and isolate and think, I am not good enough. God is never going to forgive me. But there is no sin too big for the cross. Okay. And that was something, Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell. Okay. Sorry. I keep getting it wrong, from 2819 church. He said, repent, you know, and I'll tell you, in Alcoholics Anonymous, they say resentment is the number one offender. If you, that resentment will get you drunk. Okay. I learned to speak in bumper stickers. All right. Because I mean, that is true, and there's people that I have stepped on, and then I've had people that have stepped on me. And even when there was no fault of my own, and I did a lot of searching to see if I was a part in some of these instances. Uh, and I mean, usually I was, like, that family member that sold me for crack. Okay. Uh, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but if I hadn't been drinking, I would not have went in there. So it's not about him. Okay. It's about me. And the best way to deal with that is, I have to say, hey, you know, and you cannot go to you can't just write it down. Okay. We're not doing the ninth step yet. All right. But you have to you got to make, I don't say you have to. All right. Because then when I say that, I always catch myself, because when somebody tells me I have to, I just generally don't want to. So it is suggested as, it's just merely suggested that these are things that will clear your spirit and make you feel better about your life and the decisions you have made. Okay. We have made. It's not just a you, it's a we sickness, it's a us sickness. So, uh, example number 2 is, there was a guy who was totally infatuated with me, and he decided that he wanted to like try to push a relationship on me. And I was never a relationship kind of person, because I could never stay faithful, because that's just that's just how I lived. And I had told him that. And then I made the mistake of getting in the truck with him. And then he intentionally drove us into off the road into a tree, a ditch, and a pole. And it was on purpose. So he intentionally tried to kill me because I did not want a relationship with him. And on top of that, all the head games I was playing as well. So, I have to forgive that person, because, for one, I should have never fell asleep in the passenger seat of his truck when we just had that argument, for one. For two, I should not have, we just went to go pick up drugs, So I shouldn't have been going and picking up drugs, for two. And three, I shouldn't have been playing games. I mean, that's just as simple as that. He is not alive anymore. Um, but so I had to figure out a way to do my non-living amends. Okay. And the way that we suggest that in the program is, when you help other people, okay, outside of your living situation, okay, like in recovery, in church, or whatever, that is considered making your amends to that person. You can write a letter, and like I wrote a letter to myself, a pretty good one. Um, Drugs and alcohol was on my resentment list. And, where was I to blame? Well, I did drugs, I abused them. Okay. And alcohol, I couldn't, and one was never enough. Never. So let me see another good one. So the people that I robbed a bank with, okay, the guy that was in the passenger seat that wrote the note, that planned the whole thing, and had me go in to the bank to do this. When we got, because we didn't get away with it, right? There was 3 of us in the truck, 2 guys and me. Let the girl go in, right? But anyways, that's not the point. So when we get pulled over, he says that we picked him up after the bank robbery, and which was easy for me to just say, no, that was not the case, because his wife had a black eye because she didn't do it. Right. So, and his wife had my daughter. It was just I'm not even passing the buck. Okay. The point is, all right, I didn't tell on him. I didn't snitch on him, and I didn't argue, because where I come from, that's just not how you do it. Right. But forgiveness. Okay. I had to, and he didn't do any time whatsoever. And when I did my time in prison, uh, him and his wife and the guy who was driving the truck, they didn't answer my phone calls. They left me sitting in there. So that resentment just festered, right? But, and they're all dead, by the way. They all overdosed on heroin, and they are no longer alive. So I couldn't make an amends to them, but I can write one, and pray about it. That's basically all I can do. But the point is, if I wasn't on a massive amount of Xanax, okay, and alcohol, I wouldn't have done it. All right. And it doesn't matter how much that serpent's in your ear to tell you to do these things. It's not right. Okay. So the point is, I should have done it. All right. So to let him go off of, my resentment, I have to accept that this was obviously not something. He didn't hold a gun to my head. Not that I'm aware of, because I don't remember any of it. 2 weeks before it, and a week and a half into the jail, because my detox was so bad off alcohol and pills. I don't remember any of it. But, you have to let that go. Those are just situations, like, and for another example, there's some people who have been, who've been raped. I was in situations where those things happened to me as well. I've woke up out of blackouts, and I don't even remember how I got in the car, or I don't even know. I don't even recognize the side of town. I have no idea where I'm at. My phone is dead. And I have no idea who you are. So, like, just these things happen, but it's all because of the choices I made. I wouldn't have been raped. I wouldn't have been in those situations if drugs was not involved, and it was all based on the decisions I made. And I am willing to accept that. Okay. Because I cannot sit here, and we cannot sit here and fester over these things. Because, for one, how can we live a life that we live and expect God to forgive us if don't forget we don't forgive our debtors? So it's something to think about. Okay. But like I said, this is just the list. This is not doing the amends yet. So just keep that part in mind, and I will be back with the actually, no, I'll do it right now. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to kind of skim through. This is the 12 steps and 12 traditions. And this is what it has to say about step 8, right? So it made a list of persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. All right, steps 8 and 9 are concerned with personal relations. First, we take a look backward and try to discover where we have been at fault. Next, we make a victorious attempt to repair the damage we have done. And third, having thus cleaned away the debris of our past, we consider how, with our newfound knowledge of ourselves, we may develop the best possible relations with every human being we know. Sorry. It's the only habit I have not broke besides caffeine. This is a very large order. It is a task which we may perform with increasing skill, but never really finish. Learning how to live in the greatest peace, partnership, and brotherhood with all men and women of whatever description is a moving and fascinating adventure. Every AA has found that he can make little headway in this new adventure of living until he first backtracks and really makes an accurate and unsparing survey of the human wreckage he has left in his wake. To a degree, he has already done this when taking moral inventory, but now the time has come when we ought to redouble his efforts to see how many people he has hurt and in what ways. This reopening of emotional wounds, some old, some perhaps forgotten, and some still painfully festering, will at first look like a purposeless and pointless piece of surgery. But if a willing start is made, the great advantages of doing this will so quickly reveal themselves that the pain will be lessened as one obstacle after another melts away. So, once you get into the habit, like and, like for me, I started with the people that I made my simple amends first. Okay. And then I moved on to the more difficult ones, like my dad and my kids. They were not the first ones that I made amends to because they were the big ones. And I feel like if you start small and, you know, like I said, we're just making a list, okay? But when it comes time to do the amends, all right, the best thing about it is we're not perfect, okay? And they see the attempt that we're making, right? So, and it's not an attempt to go get high or manipulate, and they may see it as that. And that's okay because that's what we planted. We planted that seed. Okay. So it's time to replant seeds and if they don't forgive, I mean that there's nothing you can do about it. You cannot run yourself into the ground trying to chase after something that maybe just needs more time. Okay. So, and the more you push, if somebody is not ready to forgive you, and the more you push, that could ruin future endeavors. All right. So it's going to take time. We start with everything. All right. Like I'll give you an example. The jails that I went to. Okay. I was not that easy to, I mean, I was not like ever a mean person or anything, but I was a needy person. Okay. And when you're in jail and you don't get commissary, you're kind of a needy person. So, and I always had a ton of medication that I had to take. So they really loved me. So a little farther into my program, I went to that county and I made an amends with one of the officers that I seen at one of my AA conferences. All right, she was one of the sheriffs for that county. So I just seek the opportunity, and I told her, I said, "Look, you guys are on my amends list. And all your amends don't have to be made right now. Okay, I know we want instant gratification, but sometimes we just need some more sobriety under our belt, some more recovery under our belt, and time to let the dust settle. So, and that's what this is. We're writing a list and we're letting the dust settle while we do that. Okay. All right. So I'll read this part here. Um, Calm, thoughtful reflection upon personal relations can deepen our insight. We can go far beyond those things which were superficially wrong with us to see those flaws which were basic, flaws which sometimes were responsible for the whole pattern of our lives. Thoroughness, we have found, will pay and pay handsomely. We might next ask ourselves what we mean when we say that we have harmed other people. What kinds of harm? Do people do another way? To define the word harm in a practical way, We might call it the result of instincts in collision, which cause physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual damage to people. If our tempers are consistently bad, we arouse anger in others. If we lie or cheat, we deprive others not only of their worldly goods, but of their emotional security and peace of mind. We really issue them an invitation to become contemptuous and vengeful. If our sex conduct is selfish, we may excite jealousy, misery, and a strong desire to retaliate in kind. Such gross behavior is not by any means a full catalog of the harms we do. Let us think of some of the subtle ones which can sometimes be quite damaging. Suppose that in our family lives we happen to be miserably irresponsible, callous, or cold. Suppose that we are irritable, critical, impatient, and humorless. Suppose we have lavished attention upon one member of the family and neglect the others. What happens when we try to dominate the whole family, either by a rule of iron or by a constant outpouring of minute direction for just how their lives should be lived from hour to hour? That micromanaging thing, right? It's not our job. What happens when we wallow in depression, self pity oozing from every pore, and inflict that upon those about us? Such a roster of harms done others, the kind that make daily living with us as practicing alcoholics difficult and often unbearable, could be extended almost indefinitely. When we take such personality traits as these into shop, office, and society of our fellows, they can do damage almost as extensive as that we have caused at home. Having carefully surveyed, and I'll read, this will be the last one I read. After carefully surveyed this whole area of human relations and having decided exactly what personality traits in us injured and disturbed others, we can now commence to ransack memory for the people to whom we have given offense. To put a finger on the nearby and most deeply damaged ones shouldn't be hard to do. Then, as year by year we walk back through our lives as far as memory will reach, we shall be bound to construct a long list of people who have, to some extent or other, been affected. We should, of course, ponder and weigh each instance carefully. We shall want to hold ourselves to the course of admitting the things we have done, meanwhile forgiving the wrongs done to us. For real or fancy. We should avoid extreme judgments, both of ourselves and of others involved. We must not exaggerate our defects of theirs. A quiet, a, a quiet, objective view will be our steadfast aim. Whenever our pencil falters, we can fortify and cheer ourselves, and by remembering what AA experience in this step has meant to others. It is the beginning of the end of isolation from our fellows and from God. So, you know, it kind of talked about like a timeline, right? So if I start from when I first started drinking, okay, um, let's see, the bars I went to, right? Kind of a pain in the ass, you know. So the bartenders, they're on the list of people that I gave a hard time to, right? They also, in turn, because I was such a pain, gave me a hard time. But I had to, my side of the street. So let's move forward into the, sexual immorality that I had. I always, kind of lied, cheated, manipulated men, right? But in turn, they also lied, cheated, manipulated me. Now, if you have a one night stand with somebody and you treat them wrong, I mean, I don't really feel like that's on the amends list. Okay, that's not somebody you got to run out and apologize. Uh, but I mean, that's just my opinion. I mean, if it was like your pastor or your preacher, maybe you should do that. But I mean, if it's like you go to the bar, one night stand, you never met him, okay, whatever. Um, God, he is definitely on the amends list. All right, that's a definite. I'm trying to see if I have any other. Uh, I mean, I don't know. I had such a long list. So, okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna end this one. All right. And when I do come back, my next video, it will be starting the step 9. I I do hope and pray that you can get a thorough 8-step list done and uh, take pride out of it, take anger out of it. Like, your recovery doesn't, like I said, doesn't have to be drugs and alcohol. You could have an anger problem. You could be arguing with your old lady and your kids are in the other room, right? And they hear that. Uh, put that on the list of things that you should probably apologize for. Um, you know, if you have a significant other and you choose porn over them, think about what that does to them. And, maybe they don't fulfill that need that you're wanting that you get out of porn. So you have a resentment towards her or him, So, you know, marriage or relationship, they're a very sacred thing. It's give and take. Okay. So, and I'm not a counselor, but I've lived it. I already know. So I only talk about what I know, and I only read out of the Bible and say that. I'm not a preacher, all right? But I am a disciple of Jesus Christ, and I know the word. So it's my duty now as a disciple to learn the word, spread it, and help people. And my start is with people in recovery because that's where I have the most, you know, expertise. It takes an alcoholic and an addict or somebody in recovery to help somebody with that same issue. So I appreciate you watching my video, and I will end this now, and I will be back later with step 9. I hope that this helps you. Thank you.